Yes. Okay. Sometimes I forget that and it's just like, I don't know. But thank you very much for coming in. I'm really excited today. I got this banner going. Let me stop that. This little banner thing is kind of fun, but you know, I don't need it now. So let's get back to it. So what we're going to look at today is I got pretty far on the diorama this week, and it was a lot of fun. I got the last figures in, and I did like the final stuff that I need to do in the in getting the figures in and getting all the underground stuff done. It's not done. There's always little things here and there. Even this week when I was doing figures, I added some little knickknacks and stuff like that. Hey, we got some folks coming in, and I want to say hello to everybody. John is here. Hello, John. I'm so glad you're back, and you're back in. John, was a little sick earlier, and so he had missed us. So thanks very much for coming in, John. I'm so glad you're here. Martin is here. Hello, Martin from Holland. That's wonderful. Thanks very much. You had some great stuff this week online. I loved your postings on your Falcon stuff. I'd love to hear about how the show went. I need to look at those posts. Oh, Eric's here. Hello. Sorry I missed last week. No problem, Eric. I mean, I get it. It's really busy, and I saw some of your stuff this week, which is really, really cool. Eric does a lot of posting. If anybody is interested, AMPS Seattle, which is Armor Modeling Preservation Society. Eric's the president. He started the Seattle AMPS chapter, and so great stuff there. You should go look it up. It's a really nice site and lots of activity. Eric's always posting, and there's a lot of really fun people putting in, armor modeling stuff. First Last is here. Hello, First Last. I haven't seen you for a little while. Thank you very much for coming in, and good morning. Thanks very much. Well, thanks for coming in, folks. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching the replay, which I do, I messed that up last week. You can see the replay in a couple places. Once this is done, what I do is I download it, and then I have to edit it a little bit, and then I can repost it. That shows up as a video. But the live stream will actually be available under live on my tab in the channel, and you can see that. So that's just another way to do it. So thank you again for coming on. I want to talk about what we're going to do this week, because everything is all about the World War I trench diorama. So I'm going to switch over to a couple pictures and show you those, because this is what I'm kind of doing. I'm showing you where we started and where we're at now. Hey, Scott McLeod's here. Hello, Scott. Thank you very much for coming in. Bill, sorry I missed last week. Back therapy went longer than I expected. Afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's doing good. Thanks very much for coming in, Scott. Scott and I share a little bit. I don't know the extent of Scott's stuff with his back, but I've got back issues. And if you're an older person, you may have some back issues too. The thing about model building is I think it's a lot better than some of the other crafts that I've kind of worked on and done, specifically woodworking. And Scott follows me in that. Scott's a woodworker too, and model builder. But when you get a little older, this is a fantastic hobby to get into. You can sit, you can also stand and build, but it is a wonderful hobby for older folks to get into. Maybe you can't do some of your other hobbies. I think this is just tops, because you can be super creative, especially with dioramas and model building. You can put all of the stuff that you want to put into a craft that maybe you can't do anymore because it's a little bit more physically taxing. And that's one of the main reasons I moved heavily into dioramas, because that's all I do. That's my business now, is just everything is dioramas. But if you're just trying to figure that out, you're getting a little bit older, boy, you got to try dioramas. You got to really try modeling. It is super fun. There's history. There's great people. There's groups. I think modeling is on a resurgence. A resurgence. Insurgence doesn't sound good, but I really think it is. I see a lot more activity. Of course, I'm in on it. I'm kind of like into diorama, so I'm going to see a lot more of it. But I think in general, I see a lot more than when I started or kind of got back into modeling years ago. So I'm going to stop talking about that, but I really think if you're not doing it, it's something you could do, and it's super fun, and I really, really enjoy it. So back to what we're doing today. We're going to look at finishing and the lower sections of the diorama, because that's what I worked on this week. Here again is kind of this is just, I like to do this to refamiliarize people that maybe don't know what we're doing here. I'm doing a World War I trench diorama. The very top is the surface. The lower two areas you see there, and then the vertical mine shaft, that is subterranean levels that are supposed to be under the front lines during World War I. It is a fictional story. They didn't have this much stuff going on underground, but I kind of, James Bonded it up a little bit. So this is the other main focus of the diorama, and that is the Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector. Now, this beast was 56 feet long, and it was deployed in World War I, or during World War I in 1916, and it was a devastating weapon. It's a massive flamethrower that would be deployed in the lines, in front of the German lines, dug into an underground tunnel, and then it would pop through the surface, and then the big nozzle on the end of it would spray the German lines with flaming diesel and kerosene, a mix of diesel and kerosene. So, boy, devastating weapon. And when I first heard about this, maybe 5 or so years ago online, I said, I got to build something. So that's like one of the main things. The other thing that's really important for me in this is the sappers. I've seen some movies, I've seen some different shows that talk about the Anzacs and the soldiers and the sappers during World War I. And so I really wanted a large part of that. So that's also in the diorama. But the first thing you just saw, the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week I did some modifications of some figures, and it's something that I like to do. And I want to show you one of the things that I've talked about previously, which is creating hair on like a bald figure or somebody that's got a flat top, because a lot of the times when you get a figure in a model kit, it'll have a flat head, so you can put a hat on it or a helmet or something like that. Totally works great. Well, if you don't want them wearing a hat, if you don't want them wearing a helmet, then there's a way to use a piece of styrene, which is what I do. I'll just glue a piece of styrene onto that flat, then carve it and make a head of hair out of it. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. So let's go back to that picture. So here is what I've done. I've taken this figure, I glued on a pretty thick hunky chunk of styrene there. And once that is secured, and it really needs to be secured first, then I start carving. Now, when I'm carving this, I'm going to come back to these images, but I've also got this really high speed visual that I created for you that I'm going to show. But we're going to go through all of this, and then you can see this is the guy after I started getting some paint on him. This is when he's fully painted and mounted in there. And then these are some other figures I did. So I don't think his hair looks too awfully bad. I'm going to show you how I do it. So first off, we're going to go right back here. And I think that, no, we're going to go to this picture right here. So what I do is I take that large piece of styrene, and, it doesn't have to be that big, but it needs to be thick. I've tried stacking thin pieces of styrene, and during the carving process, it doesn't work out that great. It does okay, but they want to separate, the levels of it. So a thicker piece of styrene is great. I'm not going to go digging for it now, but it's just thick. Okay, so I stick that on there, and then once I've got it shaped, the general shape of the skull, then I start carving the hair. And here's my high-speed drawing and diagram. I hope this is really, you're impressed by this. But this is how we do it. And we're going to start over here, and we're going to go to this. So the very first thing I do on the head, after it has been stuck on top of the flathead, it's been shaped and rounded, and that's not too difficult. The first thing I want to do is the part here and here. And how I do that is I just use a small stylus. Now, you may have one of these or something similar, but this is a little tool. It's a little Tamiya carving tool, and it's got a very, very sharp stylus at the end of it. It's more like a gouge, and it's very, very sharp. And what I'm able to do is I go in there, and you're able to cut a line almost like a seam. I wouldn't necessarily use a seam cutter, you know, because those are a little bit longer, so you can get a straight line. Here you want to carve a curved line, so I use this little stylus. So what I'll do is I'll start here at the crown of the head, and then I'll take my stylus and I will go in this direction, and it's a curve. The part line in your head is not straight. Now, mine's on the top, so maybe it's straight. But when you have it over here or you have it over here, and I vary those because I don't want two figures with, you know, so I do one over here, I'll do one over here. And then I start back at the crown of the head off to one side, and then I just cut that line on the head to where the part's going to end. And that's this picture here. So as I'm cutting that part, it's just basically a line, and it gives me a separation of where the part is. Then I switch over to a different tool. Now this tool is an actual chisel. It's a very, very small chisel. I get these from Lee Valley. They're really cool. They're like third size miniature tools, and they're fantastic. I have them all. They're just the coolest thing. But what this chisel can do is give you really tight control in there, because there's something that we need to do here with that, not the scribe, and that is this. When I am cutting out this area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this away. And we're going to go back to the picture so I can show you a little bit better what I mean here by cutting away. And what I'll do is I'll go down to the painted image. I think it's easier. Can you see that a little better? Oh, no, that's the better picture. See what I'm talking about? You see where the hair comes in from the part, and then it goes to the left side, and then it goes to the right side. Well, that's what I mean about cutting away. This is the point in which we're going to go in, and we're going to cut with the chisel from the eyebrows, okay, up toward where that part is on both sides. So I'm going to go back to my, you know, we're switching all over here. I hope that's not confusing for folks. But when I go back to this, no, that's not the picture I wanted. We're going to go to there. Sorry. When I'm cutting this, I'm going to start down here with my chisel, and I'm going to go toward this line here, and I can either cut that line, or, you know, what I'll do is I'll take the chisel and I'll cut up this direction. It's very light, very shallow here, and a little deeper here. And we saw that on the picture, you know, down here, and this is the front of the skull. Here's the back of the skull. Down here, real light, a little bit deeper here. And so I'll cut them up here, and then I'll bring my chisel in and then just chop them off, and then I'll take out those chunks. And what that gives me is a really nice, let me see, I got to go to that. Oh, that's the picture I wanted. What it does is it gives me a really nice part and a really nice edge for the hair. But I don't want to like lose, you know, the definition on the forehead. That's one of the things that, you know, I found out as I'm doing these carvings and stuff like that. There's a pretty good amount of definition on these heads when you're working on them, even from a standard kit. These aren't specialized figures that I've purchased from someone. These are standard, you know, Tamiya or ICM or something like that. Actually, these are Revell, frankly, and they're great figures. But I'm just using those. And when I cut that and when I shape that, I don't want to lose this brow ridge. That's really easy to do. You know, you're getting real tight here. The flat top on these heads that you're going to get in your kids, it can sometimes start here. It can sometimes start here. I've had some that start way down here. Either way you can do it, because I'm just using regular sanding sticks and files and round files and things like that to do my shaping. But the point is, and I'm just kind of going too long on this, is I don't want to lose any definition down here. I just want to kind of slowly go in and get deeper up here along the hairline. Okay, so let's go back to our little diagram. Well, if I could figure out which is the diagram, there we go. So once I've got the part cut, once I've got the forehead cut, Then I'm going to move here. And this is making the actual hair. And I want to start at the part and I want to end at the end of the hair. And the reason is simple. I want it a little bit deeper because when you start with your stylus and you're cutting the hair, it's going to be a little bit deeper here, which is perfectly fine. A little bit deeper here. And as you come down to the edges of the skull, it's just naturally going to get a little bit thinner. It's naturally going to want to fall off because you're doing this on a curved surface. So as I'm doing it, I'm starting on this curved surface and I'm trying to do a curved surface with my hand. I'm starting here and just kind of let it fall away. You know, it's deep here. And then I just kind of go and fall away. It makes it very shallow here, much deeper here. And I get really nice hair. Now, when I'm sculpting the hair, I'm not just doing lines, right? I'm not just doing lines. I'm doing different lines. I'm doing some lines. I have to define the first one. So I kind of have this come down all the way, a few of them. But then I start varying and I'll start the lines down here. I don't want to do crisscross hatching or anything like that. I want to keep all the hair flowing as it's been combed or as it's like fell or something like that. So I just come down here. Some of them I start a little bit late, some a little bit later, and you see I vary that pattern. And it makes it very natural looking, and that's what we have in the picture. So let's go back here, and you'll see that there's more than just, you know, lines going through there. There's some variation, there's some variance, there's different lengths of the hair. And I think that's really important to, you know, to try to achieve that because, and you look and here's the crown. It's just not a great picture, but that's what you see. You have different hair going there. Don't worry if it's not as fine as you want. Remember, this still needs to be painted. And once it's painted, then and maybe this isn't that great of a picture. I should have probably got closer. But as you look at the hair here, as I paint it, I'm using variations of color. I'm using variations of tones and stuff to try to give it something. Because, you know, my hair or your hair, everybody's hair, doesn't look always one color. It looks a little streaky. So add those streaks and that'll enhance the carving that you've done. And I think they look great. I'm happy with them because I had struggled with this for a long time. I've got a guy, he's got a hat in the original kit and he's indoors. And, you know, sometimes I'm doing it like for the Sappers when I did the Australian and Aussie and Anzacs earlier. I left their hats on. I thought it was fine because it was so distinguishable of a hat, you know. That was kind of helping me tell that these are Aussies, these are New Zealanders, these are Anzacs, these are those soldiers. So that was something because it's very recognizable. But typically, if it's indoors, I kind of want their hats off. I wasn't able to do that previously until I figured this out, and now I'm super happy with it. It doesn't bother me at all anymore. It's not like, oh, I got to do this or something like that. After doing it a few times, I've done it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times on this particular diorama. They seem to be doing pretty good and I'm happy with them. So that is my whole thing on, you know, doing those. I got more to show you, but I just want to get some comments here. I want to answer some questions and make sure that I've got everybody here. So let me go back. Howdy, Bill. I think I got that one. Here's good morning indeed. First, last, thank you very much. Scott McLeod, good morning. Yep, we talked to Scott. I got that one. Took a while, but Neil M is here too. Thanks, Neil. Hey, and Neil, thank you very much. Neil became a patron last week after the live stream. I thank you so much. That's really cool, Neil. Now, I know Neil. Neil is, he's in our local club. So it's kind of neat, you know. I mean, I show him my stuff all the time, but he still wanted to be a patron. So I really appreciate that, Neil. That's so cool. Scott Roberts. Hello, Scott. Hey, Bill, just got over COVID for 3rd time. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Scott. Well, I'm glad you're over it. So great to watch progressive superb series, Scott Somerset. Well, thank you so much, Scott. That's really good. And I'm so sorry you got COVID again. Man, that just sucks. Now, I don't want to, you know, bring karma down on myself, but I've not had COVID. Just, you know, I'm here all the time. I don't go out much. And maybe I had it. I don't know. But knock on wood, I feel pretty good about that. But thank you so much for coming in, Scott. And sorry you had it. That's no fun at all. Okay, Scott McLeod says, fantastic hobby. Yes, 6 compression fractures definitely put a hitch in your get along. That'll do it. That'll actually do it, Scott. What were you doing? Lifting the world? Oh my goodness, sir. I only have 1 compression fracture, so I'm a lot better off. I actually fell in my shop years ago. My knee, which is another problem, gave out and I came off a ladder. So that was no fun. But thank you so much for being here, Scott. And Scott and I talk almost every single day. And it's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on, Scott. And I'm glad your therapy's going better. It's really fun to see folks and to see, just people repeatedly are coming back and we're talking about stuff and I get ideas from you and it's just wonderful. Thank you much, Scott. I really appreciate it and glad you're feeling a little bit better. Martin says, good for the mind too. Training problem solving. Absolutely. The problem solving is something that I think I've talked about a fair amount. I love the fact that I'm actively working on solving problems. And that's what you're doing with crafts a lot of times. If you're even going off of a plan and building strictly off that plan, there's still things that you have to do to the parts. Me personally, I like to go in and kind of work off plan, and I like to scratch build, and I like to do all this stuff myself. Well, that's fine. It's a little bit more of that, the intensity of trying to figure stuff out instead of just using a kit. But they both are going to involve activity, learning, the things that basically keep you young, right? So a lot of fun, and I think it's a wonderful hobby if you are looking. Though I will take people from other hobbies and bring them in. I think you should drop those other hobbies and get into modeling. That's just me. Thanks, Martin. Hey, Link is here. Hello. Thanks very much, Link. It's so cool to see you. I don't get to see Link very often here. We get to see each other online every once in a while for texts and stuff like that when he comes in. But, his family, he comes from a long line of artists. So it's really, really cool to see you, Link. Thank you so much. Paul is here. Hello, Paul. Evening, fellow Muller. Sorry for being late. Just got grandkids to bed. Well, that's okay, Paul. No worries at all. And get them little ones into bed is a good thing. Martin says, how do you do the initial shaping? That's a really good point, Martin. And let's talk about that a little bit. Do I have a figure? Yes, I do. I'm just going to use this figure that has a head, but I'll just use them as an example. So when I put the little piece of styrene on top of it, let it glue, get it all set up. Then I'll take that over to my belt sander. Now, that might be a cheat for some people that don't have a belt sander, but it's just sanding. And basically what I'll do is I'll take it like this, hold it sideways when I can, and I will round the head. That's my first step. I just round it. And I'm very, very careful to round it to the contours of the head, because just like in our diagram, it's not round, it's ovoid, it's almost like an egg. Your head is shaped like an egg. So I'm following that. Once I get it down and close to the original contour of the head, then I will take this tool. Remember this? This is the very, very small chisel. And let's see if I can get it in there. It's just a regular chisel. No big deal there. But then I'll take that and I'm going up, and I'll use my own head to try to demonstrate here. So here, let's say this is the line between the white plastic and the original head. So right here at the line, I'm going to take that chisel and I'm going to place it there, and I'm just going to really carefully go up. And I just go all the way around the head, going up, so I can follow the contour, the original molded contour of the head. I'm just going up with each little tiny stroke. And I'm only taking off very, very small amounts. Very, very careful. By doing that, then I have the outside shape of the head. Then I just have to worry about the crown. And when I do a skull, I think of a skull. I'm not thinking of doing someone's head with hair. I'm just thinking of the general shape of someone's skull, which there's a lot of. Frankly, there's all kinds of shapes of skulls. But we can take a couple of things. Number one, the front of the skull here is lower than the crown of your skull. So the top of the head is higher than the front. So you want a natural slope. The other thing that you'll notice if you look at a person that maybe doesn't have hair is that it's a little bit of a crown like this. The shape is a little bit like this right at the top, okay? Then on, and you know, the best way to do this is look at a skull. You could just look at a skull online or something like that. I've been doing it for years, so I have it kind of in my head. The other place you're going to look is here. Here, there is a very large depression in your skull. And so that's a lower point. So you're going to kind of have that curved and then up to the head. So along here, above your ear, above your temple, this area right here, it's in a little bit. And then as it moves to the back of your head, it rounds out a little bit. That's the other thing. The back of your head is slightly larger than the front of your head. So you're going to kind of go like this and go out towards the back and then come back in. The crown is here, okay? If you follow the crown of the head straight back to the exact back of the head, there's a little tiny bump. I don't know what these things are called. I was never a biology person, but that little bump, you can put that in there. And then the very last thing that I do on a head is there's two cords on the back of your neck, and those are the main muscles that are on the sides of your neck and spine and stuff, and those go up and attach to points on the back of the head. You can model all of that, and it's very simple to do. These are very gradual. There's nothing like a face or anything like that where you have to have these really sharp details and stuff like that, but it's all smooth and you can do it. And it's just slight variations. It's a little bit more longer to show somebody how to do a skull. I've carved the skulls and all kinds of stuff over the years. Well, doing that gives you a good idea because except for a thin coating of skin and some muscle, there's not a lot up there, right? There's not a whole heck of a lot up there. So it's not hard to carve. I would ask you to just do it the first time. It took me a while, you know, but look at some skulls, start shaping those heads, and you'll get it. I swear, this is one of those things where, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know. You know what a head looks like. The fact is you can look at a reference if you want, but people are really good at recognizing things that are in your daily life every day. So trust your eyes. When you're looking at that head and you're trying to see the shape of the skull, you'll get it. You can have references, certainly, but I'm telling you, your mind is going to go ahead and make that association and you'll get the shape. So anyway, I think it's going to be fun if you try it. I would love to see what you do, Martin. It might be nice to do it on like a 1/20th, like, you know, on your MAK stuff, on your machining Krieger, do a bald head in that. That would be kind of fun. Just a little bit bigger, you know, a little easier to do. Neil says, question, why styrene instead of clear carving? Well, the styrene is a consistent material. So the figure is consistent, its material, and what I'm putting on it is basically the same material. Yes, there are different plastics. There are different, some are more brittle, some are a little bit softer, but in general, it's the same material. So that first part, when I'm going from the existing head up to the top of the head, if I had varying materials or differences, it would be a different consistency. And so I might do different lines. You know, you're going across and this got this one material and it's that, and then it shifts materials and then you could dig in, or maybe it's not the same. Try to have a similar material. For me, it works much better. Why not do it with putty? Well, I've tried different putties. They shrink. That's the biggest issue that I have with them. If I did milliput, yeah, fine. And I imagine that milliput would work fine. But just the styrene works so good. The other time is the drying time. Sometimes when I use a putty or something like that, it's got a very long drying time. And the putties don't seem to want to stick. Now, if I did Tamiya putty, maybe. But Tamiya putty, I don't know. It's a little runny. I needed something very, very stable. So that's why I did it. I would, if you can't, you know, you don't have the styrene, I would suggest milliput. That would be my suggestion. But I really like using styrene because it carves the same as the rest of the head that you're doing. You know, half of the head is going to be existing and it's it's styrene. So why not have the other half that you're adding styrene to? Because then you have a consistent material. For me, it works great. I really like it. So next person, blessed are those that have hair atop their heads. There you go, Scott. I do bald people in my dioramas for a very specific reason. My father was partially bald, and so I grew up my entire life, and my father, he had a little bit of hair here, but he had a lot of hair here, and it just reminds me of my dad. So it's totally cool. So I love putting bald people in, and you don't see bald people in. There's lots of bald people in the world. Why not have them in your diorama? I love it. So for me, it's a little bit easier, and I think there's a little bit more character. A couple of the folks that I've put in this diorama have a lot of character, and they just happen to be bald. So there you go. I got another bald guy coming up too. And Martin says, he's got a little smile there. Martin, great explanation, Bill. I hardly have hair. This was a bit out of my comfort zone. I'm sorry, Martin. But I have tried, and this week I tried to do another bald guy. Where's he at? He's over here. See, I gotta leave. I'll be right back. He's right here. So this guy, and I've got a picture of him later, so we'll look at him. But this guy is also bald. He's partially bald. And I got to tell you, that's really difficult to do. It is a hard job to paint when, you got this, we've got no hair or maybe just a little bit of hair, and then you're trying to get hair down here. Man, it is really difficult. I probably painted this guy 3 or 4 times, and I'm not 100%. It's just going to be something that I have to continuously do and get better at it. In this instance, I did the whole head thing, but I didn't do hair. And I think that next time it might be better if I do the partial hair, leave the top of the skull bald and then do partial hair on the sides. I didn't do that. I only painted in the hair. I did the skull as I explained, shaping the skull, but I only did partial hair on, or I didn't carve any hair on that. And that might help in my quest to get a little bit better looking hair when it's partial balding. And because I love the look. I mean, it's just, I don't know why, because, well, obviously I think it's my dad. So yeah, I love the look of a bald head and in the diorama, because there were certainly folks that were bald. Nazca, hey Nazca, how's it going? I suppose as well there's less of a gap with styrenes as it melted to the plastic. Yeah, and I think that picture illustrates that pretty good. The line, you really can't see in the line on my figure. So let's go back to that guy and see. I'm going to go back to a better picture here. Can you see the seam? There's maybe a little tiny nick there over his right eye. That's the seam, right? So, I mean, it works pretty darn good. You can see there's the seam, but to make that seam disappear, I think that is, styrene's going to be your friend. Here's a real good picture. We've seen it already, but that shows how it's deeper at, where the forehead makes it to the hair, but it's real shallow right over the eyebrows. So yeah, I think it works pretty good, and really can't see the seam. And once it's painted, you can't see the seam. It's just like it's gone. So, and I think he looks good in position. That's the other thing. I'm trying to make sure that I build these folks, the figures that I'm putting in my dioramas, they fit the scene, right? I don't know about hair, how hair falls into that, but I know that what I've done, they look natural, and I like it. I like how they come out in the scene. And then Martin says, yes, do bald, please. We need empowerment. Yes, we do. I don't doubt I'll be losing some hair soon. So I want to be part of those guys. So thanks very much. That's really cool, Martin. Know what would be a seam on the photo? Just looks like bone structure. Yeah, see, there you go. And I think that might be the seam, just that little nick. But yeah, it does kind of look like bone structure. And that's one of the other things, off of the corners of your eyes, you also have a highlight here, because that's a very prominent place right on the corners here. Those go up. So that's, where the indentations and start, for your temple and stuff. So I think looking at a skull, the old diagrams we had in school and stuff like that, those work great. Looking at muscle structure and stuff like that, the muscle structure is really what helps me when I do the painting in the face. And look, I'm no expert on painting a face, but as I get better, I'll refine this. But that's kind of one of the things I do is I try to do like those old pictures where they would take the skin off the face and they would just show the musculature of the face and all the tendons and things like that. That's really helpful for me when I see, because you'll see the bone, you'll see the cheekbone, you'll see the jawbone, you see the upper ridges and stuff like that, all this stuff. That's where you're going to highlight. Where you've got musculature and flesh, that's the lower light stuff. So they're typically a little bit sunken here. So I'm really getting into these faces. I'm really getting into the painting, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm not good yet, but I'm getting there. And that's the whole point. You know, one of the things I like to talk to my wife about is like, hey, am I getting better? I mean, honestly, I ask her those questions. Does this look like I'm getting better? I try to be objective, and I think I can tell, yeah, I'm getting better. But I also like to ask every once in a while my wife, and she's great. You know, she'll go, yeah, always. I mean, you know, she's really nice, but she'll say, well, maybe, you know, something like that, and I appreciate that, and she can do that. You know, when I ask for other people's input, I trust what they say, but sometimes I do want harsh criticism because and I've talked about this a few times. I'm hugely critical on my stuff. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it. And if it's not up to what I want, I'm going to not put it out because, I mean, you can see these pictures, right? These don't look like some of the greatest figures you've ever seen. Fact, it's just not. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop and I'm not going to put the diorama out or I'm not going to put the figure in there because every single one, I'm trying to get a little bit better. And for me, that works. You know, some people maybe you're a little bit more, it's got to be perfect. Well, you know, when you want to get your stuff out, my counter to that would be put it out there, allow some feedback, and then utilize that feedback to get a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe that'll work for you. That's kind of how I do it. So I'm very critical on it because I want to get better with every single build that I do. And I want to continuously learn new stuff. So we got one more comment down here, and then we'll go on for pictures. Yeah, that would be the other Neil. Hey, yeah, there you go. Neil has not showed them yet, but I bet he does soon. So that's very, very cool. First last, my girlfriend uses the excuse I'm not to not comment by saying the parts are too small. My eyes aren't that great. Yeah, see, she's very. I think she's pretty smart. You know, maybe she doesn't want to give you the you know, like this is not good or that's not good or whatever. I don't think that's important. I think what's important is, you know, you see it for what it is and you know where you're going. And a lot of times I think getting it from loved ones helps either reinforce when I think, oh, it's terrible. And they're like, no, it's really not that bad. Or I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And they go, well, you know, it's not. Those things, I think, for me, are not negatives. They're positive because I need a little grounding every once in a while. You know, if I get really excited about something, look, and I'm maybe not looking at it the way that some person would look at it who's not so intimately involved in it. This is something that's weird, and I'm just tangenting, but have you ever noticed when you talk to somebody about your model or your diorama at a show, and it's the first time they've seen it, and you say, oh, and you're talking about it, how much do they really see of it? It's remarkable how much they don't see of your diorama. I mean, or your model or anything, you know, something that you worked on maybe for like 3 or 4 days, this really complex antenna or something like that. And you did all this stuff and they don't even see it. So that's the kind of thing I think you have to consider when somebody that's not so intimately involved with your whatever you're working on, diorama, model, whatever, you're so intimately involved with it that you go right to certain areas. You see the whole thing. It's walking into your backyard, right? Well, somebody walking into your backyard for the very first time is not going to see what you're seeing. That's why I think it's important to get some other people's, you know, input. Hopefully, folks that you trust and love, because then it's not. It's a little bit. I'm trying to keep away from saying that they're being honest, because I think that when other people are looking at your stuff, it's not that they're not being honest. Maybe they're trying to be nice. Maybe they're whatever. But when a loved one looks at it and they tell you the honest truth, you know, you can take that and say, yeah, you got a pretty good idea. Okay, so let's go back to these here pictures because I got some more stuff to show you because I did a whole bunch of stuff this week and I want to show you. So I got these guys built up and I got them painted and then I got them mounted in. Here's the guy on the left here that I wanted in the corner, and he is like working on a bomb and he's got like this big metal plate. The metal plate did not come out the way I wanted. I should have done raised bolts on it, and I have some and I didn't, and I really should have. And I think it'd be good. Am I going to replace it? I don't know. He's in the diorama now, and I think he looks good in situ, but I'm not sure. I have gone back and changed stuff after the fact. See, here's him in the diorama, and I think he looks great. I think he looks exactly what I wanted. I think there's enough stuff going on that he looks good in there. These guys, I think, look great too. The big deal about these guys, the differences with these guys was I was adding them with something in their hands. You know, it's kind of funny. I do these figures and they all have kind of a thing about them. Well, these three guys thing was that they're all holding something in their hands. And I think it came out pretty good. And then there's just kind of like the last shot of that. So the next thing I did was this guy. You know, I've been talking about this for a while because we're underground. This is a trench and tunnels and there's water. So I needed to come up with a pump, and this is the pump I came up with. I looked at some examples. I couldn't find any good examples, but I went back to the movie Beneath Hill 60, and I was able to cobble together something that looked a little bit like a pump. I did the same thing with this guy, but this is the guy that I told you before and I showed you before that I did not do hair on. I did him balding and then just did the hair around the sides and the back. And I think it came out okay. Not my best work. Here he is, you know, close-up shot. But I like him. I wanted a little bit of gray on the temple. And you see those little indentations I was talking about in the cheeks and the nose and the above the eyes and the forehead and stuff like that. I think it looks pretty good. But definitely on the way to get proficient. This is not, I would not call this proficiency in painting figures. Thank you very much. Then I built this little area. Now this is the lower left-hand corner of the diorama, and it's in front of the listening post. And I thought it just needed a little bit more. And so that's where the pump guy is going to go. Then I took it all apart. So this is what it looks like right now. This is literally the diorama is taken apart completely. And the reason is pretty simple. So this is like going back and paying for things that I let slide is almost like what it is. If you look here in the back of this picture, this is the structure of the diorama. This is all the foam. All the foam still comes apart. All the foam is still modular because I think it's just easier to work on stuff. As I said before, I may glue some of these together, but not quite yet because I've got to get my electrical in. And that's really the next thing. But why I took it apart was specifically to get the vertical shaft fixed. And what I mean by fixed is the vertical shaft around the vertical mine shaft, you know, the pulleys and all that kind of stuff. It didn't look like it was dug out. It was just still black sides, you know, all around it. So I had to take it apart. I had to, you know, use my Dremel and texture all that and then put some sanded grout on it. And so that's what I did. And I think it came out great, but it's just going to take a while for it to dry. I mean, it's dry now, you know, but this was last night. And so it's dry now. So it's going to go back together. But before I do that, these guys, all them wires. So this is one of those points where I've got to take a fair amount of time and a little bit of knowledge because I have been using this. This is my benchtop power supply, and the benchtop power supply puts out a very specific amount of voltage and amperage, and you can control that, you know, on the power supply. But let me back up. And everything, all the lighting that I've done in the diorama up to date runs on between 2.7 and 3 volts DC. So on this, I can just hook everything up because that's what I did. That's what all those wires are. If you look at all these wires, they all came out and they all, routed to the back of the diorama. And then I just bundled those wires together, black, red, positive, negative, and hooked my power supply to it, 2.8 volts, done, right? It's done. But when I go on display, when I take this thing out to a show, when it's done, I can't have this here. So what I've got to do next is I have to go to each of those lights because they're a little bit different. I mainly use two types of lights, a 1 millimeter and a 0.1 millimeter LED. The 0.1 millimeter LEDs take a very specific voltage. I'm going to take those down to about 2.6 volts. The 1 millimeter, the larger of the two, that one I'm going to probably take around 3 volts. And to do that, what I have to do is I have to solder in line to each of these, the power source to each of these, a resistor. And that resistor I could put one for every single light, but there's like 30 lights in this thing. Well, not 30, but there's maybe 15. I don't know. But I don't want to do that. So I have to do a bunch of calculations and I got to do a bunch of gazintas and figures, 4 gazinta 5, that kind of gazintas. And so once I'm done with doing all my gazintas, then I'll be able to figure out, okay, I can do this resistor for 4 lights, which gives me a little bit easier way to work it because I have been doing for all of my dioramas 9 volts as source voltage. And this is getting a little in the weeds for some folks that don't do this. So I'm hoping I'm not losing you. But basically it's this. I used to do 9 volts to all my dioramas so that I could use a 9-volt battery. So everything was configured around 9 volts as source voltage. That works great because then you have a battery, or I could plug it in because you can get a 9-volt wall plug. Okay. Well, in doing that, those wall plugs may not have enough energy to push all the lights that I want to push. Push meaning light up. Okay. I just throw my own words in. So when I calculate what voltages I'm going to have going to this thing from a 12 volt, I've got to do it different than this because that was just supplying 2.7 or 3 volts. So that's the next job. It's going to take a little while. But when it's done, I'll have each individual component, each of these individual scenes, rooms, tunnels, everything, each one will be independently lit and will be able to be run from a 12-volt power supply. So I hope that all made sense. Again, a little bit in the weeds, but that's what's coming next. And I'll show you that total breakdown and everything and how to do that when I'm doing it. And I think we'll definitely have another lighting live stream where I show you live how I'm doing those probably next week. I don't know. I don't want to say that that's what next week is because I also have some other stuff I'm going to show you here next. But that is the next job. Getting all this electrically sound, electrically routed properly, and that'll make it, a heck of a lot nicer and easier to work on too. This is the surface. Those are the 2 surface pieces. They are also both lit, but they're probably going to get some more lighting, and there's probably going to be some more changes to those surface elements too. And that's just some more pictures there. Now, this right here is one of the stages that's coming up. So this is just 1/4-inch MDF board. And this is the stuff that I use when I'm creating the facade. I've had the diorama here so often. I keep going here so I can show you the diorama. It's not there. It's over there. So what I do is I create a facade for my dioramas these days. And I've done it the last couple. I've got some pictures to give you examples here. So this is from my MAK Machining Krieger diorama. This is from Emma, Carlos, and Ichiro. And if you notice, the bottom part that's not painted, that is just a riser. That is to bring the diorama up so that you're not having to bend over to look into the structure, to look into the little rooms that I've created and stuff like that, because it's really difficult for me and a lot of other people, the bending down and stuff like that. I really don't enjoy it. So that's the unpainted part. The part above that is the facade. And that is literally just to cover the, all the sides of the diorama that we've been looking at now for 20 weeks. We're officially at the 20-week mark of the build. So for 20 weeks, you've been seeing this, and you're not going to see those. And I know Nazca asked about that a little bit earlier, before we got on. He's like, well, wait a minute, are you going to do stuff here? Well, I am. I'm going to do some things to the sides like I've done to another diorama. But I'm going to do this a little bit more like I did Wolfenstein. I think Wolfenstein, my last large diorama, well, 2 dioramas ago, had these little placards and it had these little windows and really created a sense of vignettes of little scenes that you could see. And I really liked that. I thought that was a really, really neat thing. So that's what I'm going to do. This is Wolfenstein. If maybe you haven't seen it, this is Wolfenstein, and it's not a great picture because you can't get too close. But here is Wolfenstein before the facade was put together. Here, the individual pieces are just cut out, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this diorama. It's going to be a little bit more complicated because there's more cutouts and things like that, but I literally just cut windows in it. I tape it up. I kind of make sure it's going to fit properly and all that kind of stuff. Then I'll go in and glue it up. And these glue ups can be wacky. This is a pretty wacky glue up scene because the edges, I don't want to add a whole heck of a lot of additional support and stuff like that. I do enough to make it a solid facade, but it's not going to be heavy. I want it to be very lightweight. Its only real purpose is to hide and kind of clean up the external parts of the diorama. Okay, so that apparently is about it. So what I've been doing is finishing up the tunnels. I have been finishing up my figures. I have been kind of getting everything arranged to do this last final push. And by that, I mean the surface. So that's what's coming up next. I don't know if I'll probably do the electrical this weekend, so I have that done just to get it out of the way because I can do it and just concentrate on it. And then I can put it all back together now. I got to do some painting. And then I've got to get the base together. And then I'm going to take those original 2 top pieces. I'm going to go back to a picture of it and show it to you. But I'm going to take these original 2 top pieces up here in the corner. And I'm going to basically just work on those going forward. I may not even have the top base that they're on because there's going to be a lot of detail that has to go in those. So I'll probably work on them individually. There's also going to have to be a lot of barbed wire we've talked about. I showed you my barbed wire jig, and I showed you the barbed wire jig, but I also showed you the barbed wire picket jig that I made. I'm going to bring that back out. I've got a bunch of pickets already made up, but I've got to do barbed wire on the top. I'm going to do a splash. So there's a couple of places on the top where I've got like artillery splashes that have come in. So I've got to detail those out. I'm going to have a partial like cave-in of the trench, because of that one splash, that one artillery shot that got close to the line. I'm going to have that affecting. So there's a whole bunch to go. And I jokingly say that I'm hoping this will be done by February because there's a show in February that I really want to, I'll be there. I'm hoping this will be there. I jokingly say that I want to get this done by February, but honestly, it's going to be pretty tight. The surface, I got a lot of stuff I got planned for the surface. I got a lot of things, a lot of details that I've been kind of waiting to work on because I'm waiting on figures and I'm waiting on other stuff to do. So my mind is just constantly thinking, okay, I can do this, I can do that. Well, now's the time. So that's what's coming up. That's what's going on. That is what I did this week. And yeah, that was pretty awesome. So I think we're all done. I'd love to get more comments from folks. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have had that maybe I missed or something like that. Please ask. And then I do want to talk about my patrons because I got a new patron this week. Neil, I talked to it about earlier. Neil came on and he is a new patron. So I really appreciate that. The weeds are critical, and we'll talk about that. Martin says, I did a wildcat and it was the first times I did weathering and fading. When I was ready, I thought I overdid it. I showed my wife and asked what she thought. Her response, what weathering? That is so awesome. See, that's exactly what wives will do. Kids are the same way. Kids are wonderful because kids have no filter. And you just, I mean, you show them your model, they might say, what the heck is it? Because I don't know. But you know, if you can get maybe a little bit older, maybe 12 or 13-year-old, you know, my nephews and nieces could do it. I say, okay, so this is a tank and it's supposed to look like this. And what do you think? They would totally give me the straight answer. But I love the fact that that your wife was saying that. That's fantastic. John says, curious how you paint the highlights on the uniforms. I'm dry brushing. No, actually, that's a really good point, John. I didn't do any dry brushing on the uniforms. And this is a little bit new for me. And I'm trying to do a little bit better on my uniforms, my blending of the acrylic paints. Because I've said this before, when I paint figures, I paint them with Tamiya. And first, like the first coat, all the blocked in, you know, colors, Tamiya. Then I move to acrylic. And by doing it that way, I think the Tamiya sticks to the figure better than the acrylic does. But then I have to go in with different paints to do those variations, the highs and the lows. I've been doing it now with acrylics, it's the 5/0 brush that I do, and I'm actually painting in the highlights. I'm not dry brushing them in. I've always dry brushed them in the past. I think I've probably done dry brushing on every single figure up until this point, but I'm really trying to do it now where I'm fading it in, and I'm finding that I'm able to do it a little bit better. It's not where I need to be. We talked about that. I got a long way to go, but it is getting a little bit better. And by doing those strokes, the thing that I figured out the last month, I guess, is when I do a stroke of paint on there, that's just not the color. It's not the color. You got to let it dry. And the acrylic will look opaque, but once it dries, it will be translucent. And you'll be able to see that through that light coat. And this is from Neil Bullard, by the way. He was one of my friends that said, hey, try this. I'm like, done there. And look, it's beautiful. But what it does is when I do that stroke on there, I got to let it dry, and then it'll become a little bit translucent, and I can see the background through it. And by doing that, and a little bit of stippling where I'm just, you know, dabbing almost with just the tip of my brush with tiny amounts of paint and very thin, I'm able to blend. Like I said, this is like the last month is really where I've gotten into this. And so it's nowhere where it needs to be. And I'm probably just not spending as much time as I need to on the figures too. I mean, that's a fair point. But they're getting where I want to go, and they're a lot closer to where I want to be than in the past that I've done. So I'm not doing dry brushing on them anymore. I may go back to it. I may find that, you know, this is just bunk and it doesn't work at all. Possible. But for now, I'm not doing dry brushing on my figures, and I'm actually painting that in. And as it dries, I'm seeing that the colors come out, and then I can do another, and I'm really liking it. So in other words, I'm still learning that part, but the dry brushing I'm not doing. I am doing painting and just light acrylics, super thin, lots of water, and let it dry, and then come back to it. And it's working out great. I'm really liking it. It takes a lot more time, certainly, but I like the effect. Scott says, I have no doubt in your abilities. Well, thank you, Scott. That's great. I had this conversation yesterday. I had a nice conversation with a couple of gentlemen in the UK. And what we were talking about is confidence. And it's not necessarily that I am confident that I can just do this rad whatever. That's not the confidence that we're really talking about. It was the confidence to know that when I mess up, I can probably get myself out of it. So it's a much smaller, concentrated form of confidence that I'm talking about. I'm not confident that everything I make is going to be the greatest. As a matter of fact, I know it's not. I just really try to make the next thing I do fun and enjoyable and put the time in. I think time really, for me at least, helps get these things out. But it is that confidence to try stuff knowing that I can fix it, or I can repair it, or I can dig myself out of a hole that I get into. I like to back myself into a corner, and nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is putting these restraints or constraints on me. I'm doing it to myself. And I think what that does is it allows me to go in and get into a situation where I got to get everything up in here working on it. If I know how to do something, it doesn't come out right. I'm like, well, why didn't it come out right? I don't know. Well, I'll do the same thing again and hope it comes out right. Well, if I don't know what I'm doing and it doesn't come out right, well, I'm just not done. I don't know. It's just a way of thinking about it. But I really want to make sure that I build my abilities to overcome new things, so I have the confidence to say, yeah, maybe I don't know how to do this, maybe I don't know how to complete this thing, but I'm confident that I'll stick with it, and I'm good at learning, and I'm good at figuring stuff out, and that's the confidence that I go in to do it. I don't want to be one of those folks that doesn't want to try new stuff because I don't think I'll be able to, or I don't know if I'll be able to do it well. I'm not a perfectionist, and sometimes and I'm not generalizing, but if you are a perfectionist, maybe you are like this. I know people like this, and that's what I'm talking about. They're perfectionists, so they don't want to start something because they don't have the confidence that they will finish it correctly. So they don't start. They don't want to mess it up. They don't want to do something subpar. They don't want to break it. They don't want to fail is what it is. I have no fear of failing whatsoever. I know that every single thing that I go into, I could absolutely fail. But the confidence that I have from doing this for so long, that even if I mess something up, even if I screw it up, even if it's complete washout and it can't work, I can either start again or I can shift and I can make what I really want to do it. I can make it happen. So that's the kind of confidence. It's not the confidence I'm going to make this great thing. It's micro confidence of, okay, at this particular task, I can do this. I know I can. And if I mess it up, I can fix it. So that's the kind of confidence that I have. And I'm not necessarily a confident person at all. It's just that I have confidence in my abilities to overcome things. So that's kind of how I see it. I hope that made some sense. And I just wasn't talking into the ether. But let's see. First Last says, thanks as always for sharing. Love seeing the progress and prowess. Well, thank you very much, First Last. That's really cool of you to say. I really appreciate that. And Aridink, oh my goodness, I haven't seen you forever, Aridink. It's so great to see you. Thank you for coming on so much. There's so much going on. I haven't had a chance to talk to you for a while. So I'd love to say hi. And it's just wonderful to see you on here. So thanks very much for coming on, Aridink, and seeing you. If anybody is interested, my Patreon, because that's what we're going to talk about next. My Patreon is doing very well. I think I'm adding more things to it. And I want to show you this because I have a new gentleman, and I mentioned his name earlier. There we go. Neil is in there. So Neil is one of my patrons now, and I really appreciate it, Neil, and all of my patrons: John, Evan, Daniel, Scott, Stephen, Neil, Mark, Joshua, and Ryan. Now, this is a little bit funny, but I have more patrons than that, but they're the non-paying patrons, which is fantastic. Heck, if you don't want to pay, I do try to get some stuff up there that you will like. And I've started to go back on older posts, like I don't know how many posts are on there, but like the very first ones that I've done, I'm opening those up for folks that are non-paying members. But the paying members, and there's tiers and stuff in Patreon, they have different things that are available to them, and the one-on-ones and all that kind of stuff. But I do appreciate everybody, and I really, really appreciate if you go look. You don't have to pay anything. I appreciate it when you do, because that helps keep me doing this. This is my gig. This is what I do. And so to keep bringing you this and buying paint and all that kind of stuff, Patreon really helps. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sleazen is here. Thank you very much, Sleazen, for coming in. That's really, really cool. I just wanted to get your name up there. Thank you very much, Sleazen. When we talked about some stuff this last week too, I think, or it might have been last week, but it's great when I get to talk to people. Folks, if you're out there and you're working on something and you're not sure what the heck to do next, sometimes you just want to talk about it. give me a call. Get online. We can do a live one-on-one. I don't mind doing it. Send me a text. We can do something, and we can even do it live because it's really fun to talk about dioramas. Part of my business is consulting, and so I consult with people, and that's paid. But just to talk about something real quick, we can do it, and call me up, and I will make time, and we can have an appointment, and we can talk about your diorama or the situation or what you're looking at doing or something that you kind of run up your head into and you just can't get over it. Well, with my background and my experience, not just in modeling and not just in diorama building, but woodworking and metalworking and steel and manufacturing and all that kind of, and CAD for crying. But I'm not gonna help you on CAD because I don't do CAD anymore. But that's my background and my experience. I have all of that. So if you have questions, if you have ideas, you want to discuss them, you want to bounce them off the wall, I'm the person that you can do it with. I'm very available. I work 7 days a week, but I am available Monday through Friday, regular hours. And if you want to contact me and talk about a diorama or an idea or something like that, do it. I don't charge folks the first time that we talk, but if you find value in it, then we can set something up and we can do a charged call. So it's totally fun. I really enjoy doing it with folks. And if you have an idea that you want to explore, let's talk about it. I think you'd have a lot of fun. I know I would have fun because I get just really jazzed about talking about dioramas and ideas for dioramas. So thank you very much, Leeson. That's really cool. Martin says, rationally, I understand and agree, but as a perfectionist, your approach will always be an effort. And I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Will always be an effort for me. But this hobby actually helps to gain that confidence that you can fix stuff. And I agree with that. One of the things that I mentioned yesterday when I was on the call with the guys in the UK was, going to shows and coming back from a show. I've seen people just fall apart because, something got broken on the model. And that's understandable. That's totally understandable. You've worked on something, you've put your heart and soul into it. And if somebody does something silly with your model at the show and isn't careful or whatever, they try to reach, whatever the case may be, and it breaks, I can understand that. But I don't get upset because it happens to me too. I don't think there's a show I've ever gone to that I haven't come back and something has to be repaired. Fact. But I've not been to hundreds of shows like some folks. So maybe I'm just not as aware of it. But I guess the point is, even if something at a show gets broken, it doesn't bother me that much. I can fix it, Now, my models aren't something that you're going to see in the Tamiya, their museum at Tamiya. You're not going to see it there. But at the same time, I am putting a lot of effort and a lot of hours in this stuff. Feel good about the fact that you built it. Feel good about the fact that you can do this stuff. Feel good that you can fix it. And your fixes sometimes are going to be better than the original. I've done that. That's happened to me a bunch of times. I had something and something didn't work out. And not just modeling or dioramas, but just projects that I've worked on. And something maybe didn't work out. And I fix it, and it's way better the second time. So give yourself a little bit of grace, I guess, is what people sometimes try to say. Give yourself a little grace. Just get back in there and repair it. And I bet it's not as bad as you think. It is that confidence of being able to just walk in and say, my model is broken, I can fix it. Or this is something new and I've not done it before, but I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. And I'm going to do it because I'm confident that I can learn how to fix it if I don't do it perfect. I think that's a big part of any craft. Getting to that point where you are confident, not necessarily that I can do something, but like Martin says, your abilities. And somebody else said abilities. Scott McLeod, thanks, Scott. But it is confidence in your abilities. And that kind of confidence makes you be able to go into many, many different things and apply your abilities, not just modeling, not just diorama building, whatever, creating a new thing. Your abilities are a good place to couch that confidence. So thank you again, folks. I really appreciate it. This has been a really fun one. I enjoyed this. I hope you did too. And I'm looking forward to new stuff next week. I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you or all of you. I would love to hear from everybody. So chime in this week. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're working on. Ask me some questions. If you got a question for me, we'll set something up and we can talk. So thank you so much. I hope everybody's going to have a wonderful weekend. I've had a wonderful time talking to you today. I was just kind of talking, but reading stuff. So I really appreciate it. Have a great day and we'll see you. Have a great, wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.